Hello and warm welcome, dear audience, to New Generation Women, and I'm Janine Panzenos. Today I talk again, the second time, to an interview guest who received strong and wonderful feedback from our audience. The reason I asked him again, and he charmingly immediately said yes. His field of expertise is psychotraumatology. He is a psychotherapist and professor in psychology and developed the identity-oriented psychotraumatherapy. His latest book is called Love, Desire, and Trauma. So a late night talk show again, but this time with food in my belly. Warm welcome from Munich to Munich. Hello, Professor Dr. Franz.
Janine, and hello to the audience and those who are listening and looking at this interview.
Thank you so much for being here again. I think it was such a wonderful, interesting interview, and we received so many views. So I thought this is wonderful to really do something. There was a statement, the focus today is on leadership and trauma, and there was a statement on the whole world became a war zone. But before we go more into the different levels and different areas of leadership, I would talk about the basics of psychotraumatology and psychotraumatherapy for those who are not as familiar with it. What is the difference between a stress reaction and a traumatized reaction?
Okay. If we are stressed, then there's a need to do something, yeah? And there is, as long as we are in a state of stress, there is something that we can do. There is an option we have. There is something we can do to rescue ourselves or rescue others. The moment when you realize whatever you do doesn't make the situation better, in the opposite, it makes it even worse. Yeah, if you run away, or if you fight, or if you talk or something like this, if you realize whatever I'm doing, it doesn't improve my situation, but in the end, the risk of being killed or the risk of being blamed by some important person. If you realize that, then you have to do something different. And this is the moment when we switch from the stress reaction mode to the trauma emergency mode. And then there is something what you can do is to be immobilized, no movement. Another thing is no feelings, that you do not show any excitement or any fear or any rage any longer. And another thing is maybe also you collapse. You shut down the whole system and you faint away.
So if
that is the last options we have in order to survive. This is what trauma reactions are.
So if you have a panic attack or something that feels like a panic attack, you become extremely scared. Is that also a traumatized reaction?
Yes, the panic. If you're in a severe state of panic, that means I'm helpless. I can't do anything to rescue myself. I have to hope maybe my opponent stops to attacking me. So this is what we have as a reaction. And then if this continues, and if you see, oh no, the person is going on, the process is going on, and the last chance to survive and not to die from the panic, that the whole organism is overexcited, the last chance is to shut down this reaction, and to split off the anxiety, the panic reaction, split it off from your consciousness, or split it off from how the whole organism is reacting. And because normally our anxieties have the quality that they go through the whole organism. You can't do anything else. But if you succeed to contain the panic somehow and to make it as a part of your organism, then maybe you have a chance to survive.
You said in our previous interview that almost everybody is traumatized, so many more people than we think are traumatized. Usually you think, war is traumatizing people, rape is traumatizing people, losing your parents, but there are smaller events than this. How do I realize that I'm traumatized?
Normally, when there are symptoms, certain symptoms you can observe, there's maybe when you start with the body, you have some what we call illnesses, and you do something to cure the illnesses, but nothing really helps. Yeah? Something maybe it's a chronic disease or something that is, or cancer, or uh, problems with some organs, with your heart, with your stomach, with your skin, that can show you that if nothing helps, it's a good idea to say maybe this is something that is a result from trauma on the level of the body. The same is with what you said, panic attacks or deep depressions, or if you are very easily triggered to rage, to feel a lot of rage, or easily be triggered to feel shame or feel guilty, or if there are problems with relationships, if you're in a relationship, maybe a love relationship, but it doesn't succeed, that for a longer time you can really have a constructive way of dealing with the other person, but always something happens that makes you depressive, or that triggers rage again, or something like this. And it's very, so there is a high probability that they're behind those problems, that problems on the surface, deeper down, there are experiences you have made that were traumatizing for you.
Can that also be, I mean, I know some of my friends were changing their relationship partners pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
So can that also be if you change your relationship partners a lot, and that also has caused, or that comes from a traumatizing experience?
Yeah, because you repeat experiences from very often from childhood. In this partnership relationships, you are not really present as you are in the age you are, but what is triggered in these relationships is your maybe violent experiences as a child, that you have made experience of violence, and then, or experience of being neglected, or not really be wanted and not really be loved. And this, because it is still in you, then you, on the one hand, you always find persons that are not good for you, that really are good for you. Or if there's somebody who is nice to you, you can't believe him, because you do, out of your childhood experience, you not really trust anybody. You have lost trust in your mother or your father, and this is so devastating that you even trust yourself in one way, and you in a deep level you don't trust anybody unless you have cured this trauma. When you have worked it through, then you're open for something new. Otherwise, trauma means we're repeating our old patterns again and again.
And again and again.
There is,
and that's
in a way, there is no future. There is no real present, because the past dominates the present, and then there is no real future for you, because you're stuck in a certain process of development of your identity, and only when you went through this trauma experience, then the door is open for something new. Otherwise, it's closed.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are many different ways of healing, and there is a spiritual approach and an approach from psychotherapy. So in a spiritual approach, or the neuroscience approach, that has been also said, you know, you don't live in the past, don't live in the future. But if I hear you saying, I mean, there's some part we can seem not to be able to get back, to collect back. It's the part that is separated. And even if you read it, even if you understand it, some people seem to still repeat it, as much spirituality they have done, or retreats they have done, or maybe mindfulness-based stress reduction, meditation, and they still seem to repeat the same pattern. Is that the cause because a human being cannot do it by him or herself? It needs to have a kind of certain support and set a stage where somebody feels safe and somebody can open up. It's almost not doable by yourself.
Yeah, because it has most of what's traumatizing has to do with relationship. It's not only because there is a thunderstorm or fires, but you are traumatized in a relationship, and that means to make a new experience in a relationship, and to make the experience that you have been hurt and have been violated, you need to go back to this relationship mostly it's the relationship with the father or the mother, in most cases, where it all started, and to make a new experiences with a relationship. For example, with a therapist or a group, that you can distinguish this group or this therapist is not the same as was my family system, or this therapist is not the same person I experienced my father or my mother.
Mm-hmm.
So
So
this
from
is
the, yes, sorry, you go ahead. Sorry.
it's not, so it's not only about you can do it on yourself, because you have to do it in a relation. You have to make new experiences in a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You talked about shame shortly, and the reaction of shame and vulnerability is so often a reaction of people, including myself. I mean, still, at one part, it didn't have the wheel of my car anymore. At one part, it would just, go behind the car. It would still have its voice, but after a while, it got really boring to me. So it didn't have me in its grip. And I still, if I work with teams of corporates, I still see if they talk openly. So why are you afraid of talking your truth? It always comes, fear of shame, fear of being disconnected, fear of being ridiculed, vulnerability. It's just that would always almost say everybody's traumatized, because so many people I've asked who wouldn't think that at all. They would have the same reaction and be honest and say, yes, there's the same reaction I'm dealing with. Why is shame and vulnerability why is shame so often coming? What is the cause of that, or the source?
What I found out, and is really very something that only recently I became so clear about it, is that shame has to do with the fact of not being wanted, the fact of not being wanted by your mother. That your mother became pregnant, but she didn't want to become pregnant. She doesn't want to have a child or another child, or in this period of her life, a child. So then sometimes, of course, mothers, the woman tries to abort the child and succeed with this. But very often this, okay, I'm now pregnant and I don't want to abort the child, but I also don't want to have the child. Then the child realizes, I'm an obstacle for my mother. I spoil her life. Yeah. And if you get this message from the very beginning, and also after birth, and whenever you do something wrong, this reminds your mother, oh, why do I have this child? It would be much easier, my life would be much easier not to have this child. And this is so, and it seems it's widespread. It's very widespread in our cultures that many women have sex and they become pregnant and are not really decided, have not made the decision to have this child. And this is what I very often in my therapy groups see. There is a deepest level of shame, where all the shame results, because in the end it means, oh yeah, it's a shame that I'm here at all. It's a shame that I exist. And as a next step, then you think always, I have to do something special in order to have the right to exist. I have to justify why I'm here. It's a quite different situation from that your mother says, okay, I am ready to be a mother. I enjoy to be a mother. I enjoy to have this child. I want to have this child to grow. I want to have the child to develop in his own way. It's an absolutely different situation. And this child would never have this deep shame.
But it's interesting that you say that you were also surprised, and so many women actually, they had sex and then they were not ready for a child. Because I think they are so ashamed to admit. And I always ask women, did you really want to have that child? Did you really were happy? Because our whole system is built on, and all the marketing campaigns are built on, family, and you grow that, you see that, and the happiness that family have. You have a car, a house, then you have a husband, and you have at least 2 children, and then happiness complete. And I think so many people feel so ashamed if that is not the case, and secretly they want to get out as a mother, and then the child, of course, gets that.
Yeah. They are oriented on what is expected, but it's not oriented on themselves, what they really are ready for, really feel capable, and what in the end, what they really enjoy.
And from the identity point of view, when a child or a human being has split in 3 parts, you explained that once in one of your speeches, which was awesome. And then you have the traumatized part, the healthy part, and the one who is reinventing him or herself. Was it that way? I don't quite remember it, but I think it was.
I call it surviving strategies.
Yes, exactly.
That you construct something what is beyond the painful reality, because this is a painful reality if I'm not wanted. Yeah, and so I create something for myself in order to survive this and to avoid this pain.
So that could be being a workaholic, being extremely career-driven, for instance.
Of course, there are many ways of this, what we call narcissistic behavior, for example. That oh yes, I'm important, and maybe the most important person in the whole universe. Yeah, but as an attempt to compensate this shame.
Okay.
That deep down I'm not wanted, and deep down I have made the experience that I should not exist.
And I'm not loved, so therefore I do everything.
As a consequence, then I'm not loved at all. Yeah.
So in the healing approach, you bring the parts together into unity and to wholeness, and that's where the health and healing is happening. Going again into the power of honesty that I call always. You said also, I heard you saying, talking truth, speaking truth in generations, in culture, in politics, for you as a human being is one of the first and most important steps. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, because our human psyche is designed for picking up the reality. It doesn't help if you invent reality, but you have to live in the reality. So this is the most important thing for a healthy psyche. It must be clear what is and what is not, and what is the truth and what's not the truth. So if the reality and the truth is so hard to stay with it, because it is shameful, or because it is frightening, or because it is it produces a lot of anger in you. If you say this is true, oh, can't it be? So, but then when it's too much of that, feelings of shame and anxieties and rage, and so you can't deal, your psyche cannot deal with it, you split it off, and then you invent another reality that seems more appropriate for you. Then you create maybe in your mind you create an ideal world as a counterpart of the real world.
I think
you try to stay in this ideal world.
Yes, and you feel that. No, sorry, and you feel that. You feel that if somebody is always positive and always giving compliments, and it's strange, but you feel drained. It's very exhausting for the other person to be with this person who tries to create everything so positive. And I had that many times until I understood that's not real. That's completely an unreal world. Why are people, for instance, we will talk about leadership in corporates anyway, but talking about truth now, I see it so many times. People are so afraid to talk the truth. Afraid of being disconnected, afraid of not belonging, afraid totally illusions, afraid of losing their job, afraid of being slapped again. But it's a collective energy. And I, at the moment, like in businesses where I have my most experiences, that's where I see it's the biggest problem, the fear of talking truth, the fear of showing up, the fear of raising your voice, not to finger points, but to really stand up for yourself. And it just is not happening. So people are minimizing, they are making things smaller, they're so diplomatic. And I'm so getting sometimes so irritated when they're so absolutely diplomatic, because there's no life anymore in the language, in the communication, and in the person. And they're so used to this way of communicating that there's absolutely nothing staying with them. And then they come to me and say, we need to be enthusiastic. We need to be motivated. And I think, yes, with what? So could you shed some light on why people are so afraid? You wouldn't say that they're especially traumatized. They would say, I had a really good childhood, or they do have safety and have enough. They don't have existential fears, in quotes, on the surface.
Until my 40s, I also thought I had a happy childhood and grew up in, it was not in enrichment, but it was okay. And so but unless I really look back and with my approach, my method, I could get access of my early times of development, realizing that there were nearly four times I was dying, was killed. And so this is the truth. Now I know the truth, and this truth helps me much more to reconnect with my body, to reconnect also, and I'm not afraid of the truth any longer. There's nothing to hide. But as long as I deny my trauma, I have to hide my trauma, and I have to do as if it didn't happen. And this, then you play roles. You try to put on your mask, and you try to be somebody else than you really are. And I only can say how relaxing it is in the end to really have getting access to also painful truth. It makes life much more easier, much more for me. I'm much more relaxed with that.
It is so liberating. And I just saw 2 days ago an interview of Lady Gaga. Now, I wasn't a fan of Lady Gaga, and then I saw the movie A Star is Born, and I really found her in her vulnerability. She was standing out. There was no makeup, no mask, all that role that she had created. And everybody loved her for that. And I think she got so many fans. And then now an interview with Oprah, she, in January it was, so the audience, if you want to see it, it's 5th of January, Oprah, and for Visionaries 2020, I think, so you can see it. It's really good. And coming back to our interview, what I liked so much about her, she was just saying she had chronic pain or has chronic pain. She is in a therapy called DBT, and then she has many different approaches, and she calls her fibromology, not even talking if that's true or not, but just the vulnerability and the courage she was showing up. And she said, I put my shame into the box, and I think if you show up and if you talk your truth, shame cannot exist. Shame can only exist as long as it's hidden. And what I found so amazing, I'm so sure it did it for me and for many others, if somebody starts to open up, there's like this little crack, and that crack gives space to so many other people to have the bravery to be liberated by their own prison and start to speak up. Is that true? Did you also observe that?
Absolutely agree with that, what you say here, because it's, there's a collective panic, to really be yourself. But if some people start, and you see the consequences, that they are destroyed, but they in the end they get sympathy for that, and they are supported. They get support for that also. No? Then this is maybe liberates also others, and there's a role model for others too.
And the paradox is they start to be loved. You know, once you open up and show your truth, and I had that many experiences in that, and I call myself a brave heart, but just because there was a lot of fear. So I would always go up and speak up, and it was always hard. It was always not easy. And, you know, you don't get rewards and Oscar right away, but looking back, it also did something for yourself because you never left your own truth. And it strengthened you as a personality. And Daniel Gamsa, who you had this interview at the Rubicon Publishing Company, also a nice interview to watch the audience. He was so open about it that when he had a decision to make to stay strong for his truth, which would maybe cost his job, or to go back, be a doormat, and, you know, weave into to society. And his wife also supported him and said, no, you know, go for truth. We will survive anyway, even if you lose your job. And I found this such a wonderful example. That's a leading example, and that leads to the next 4 levels that you created. Leadership in politics, leadership in corporates, businesses, leadership in parenthood, and leadership in relationships. So let's start with politics. I mean, we all know Donald Trump, and we all know he seems, for the people who voted for him, he seemed to finally talk the way he talks truth. I'm sure that he completely thinks that he's rescuing America, and that the followers, that they are behind him, that they think he's doing that. And we all see that there's a kind of lack of sensitivity in the consequences that he, or in the decisions he makes, and the consequences people are suffering of. Now, Trump is still small compared to another example, which is Hiroshima. When we talk about Truman and the pilot, who were the decision makers in this whole scenario, where 80,000 people were killed in a second, that's something that has no logic. And you said once, trauma has no logic. So how can you explain that President Truman and the pilot who flew the airplane can make such decisions where they kill 80,000 people in 1 second? How that can that be true? The same with people who rape other people. How can that happen?
Yeah, because they're not really living in the reality. They're living in a world of ideas. They're living in a world of their own creations, mental creations. In the end, you can say there is no America. America is just an idea. America is just a construct that you have made some treaties. They call this America. But what is America? There's you as a person are real, and the animals are real. But America is just an idea, a concept.
The freedom of America, the land of the free, yes.
Yes, this is also a concept. Like every country is just a concept. It's just an idea. Like money is just an idea, Money is just a construct. We agree with it, or many people agree with it, and then it becomes as if it is something real. But it is not real. What's real is, for example, people living in Hiroshima, And if you would be in reality, you wouldn't do it. If you are living in your concept, and why do you live in such concepts? Because you're not in contact with yourself. That you take a country more important than yourself, or the people living in the country, to sacrifice people, soldiers, whatever, sacrificing it for ideas. And then there's a question: where do these ideas come from? And my answer to this is that they come from a trauma of identity, because you're not sure, not clear who you are. You have split off from your point of reference, your own I, and knowing what you really want. You have split it off, going into substitute roles as a politician or a teacher or whatever profession it is. And then you live in your concepts, not really in the reality, because, and what I say, you're not your identity, who you really are. You start to identify yourself with something that is outside of you, and makes this more worth than you are, and makes it more worth than anybody.
So that's why they are connecting and with ideology and community. That is then it's replacing their own identity, because they don't have any. So that's why
they have given it up. And my knowledge is that we do give it up very early, sometimes already in the womb of my mother. When I realize I'm not wanted and my mother doesn't want me, then I split off myself and I identify with her needs. What does she need? What is important for her? What do I need to do for her in order to be loved? The same repeats. What do I need to do for my country? The country, I'm really sure that for all those big leaders who love their country, in fact, they try to get from the country something what they didn't get from their mother.
Yes.
So the country is a substitute mother figure, or for others a little bit complicated again, or the father figure. The father, the country as a substitute father, the fatherland. So this is in the end also the lack of real identity, and so you act out this, and what do I do? Have I to do for the country? And this always means I have to have sacrificed something. I have to sacrifice myself. I have to sacrifice others.
It's amazing, yes. And sometimes people blow themselves still up. I mean, they still blow themselves up, not facing the truth, but rather sacrificing for the country, because that's where they feel. It's absolutely beyond again. And I like what you said, trauma has no logic. That completely makes sense, because then you can also understand it doesn't have to go that far, but in your neighborhood, in your community, in your loved ones, you can sometimes understand how that goes. And with my mom, something really horrible happened in my childhood, but my mother completely neglects it. There's absolutely no way. She gets blank. I see that she gets into a bubble, and there's no way talking to her. So I can see this with other people. When they get blank into their bubble, that's when it seems to be that that's the part that is separated from them. Going back further in leadership and politics, now two very absolutely different men. I'm sorry for maybe the example is so horrible, strange, but it also gives a good explanation. You can get a good explanation. Talking about the childhood of Hitler, you have done some studies on him, and then the childhood of Elton John, because there was just this movie out, The Rocket Man. So Elton John had a kind of nasty childhood like you see in the movie. And there is one person who is a leader in the entertainment business, and there is one person who has been a massive leader and killed around 11 million people, which is just unbelievable, destroying, masses of people, and there's someone who's destroying himself. So both are destroying out of consequence of their childhood. If Hitler would have had a different childhood, would that not have happened, or would have his personality anyway be so negative, so dark, that he might still have created harm and horror?
No, I'm absolutely sure. I'm really absolutely sure that a child who is wanted, and a child who is loved, and a child is also protected, not violated by being beat off, or by sexuality, whatever. So if this doesn't happen, you never get so destructive. Yeah. What I've found out in my research is that a victim of trauma, every one of us in one way becomes a perpetrator of trauma. That means you perpetrate others and traumatize yourself. This is when this doesn't happen. If you are not a victim of trauma, you do not become a perpetrator of trauma. And there is no sense in it. There is no logic. You can't find it in reality. You only find this connection between the child is a victim of violence, of neglectance, and of not being loved, and then becoming a perpetrator later on towards others. In how much, in what dimensions, depends, of course, of the circumstance. It depends of, Hitler was someone who also, after participated in the First World War, and after the First World War, he was homeless, and so he has lost everything as a whole for himself, and so he radicalized himself. And so this depends on the circumstances. But if the circumstances are worse, then the possibility that many of us radicalize is very high. Like we see today also in Europe, the amount of radicalization is still is growing again. It was a time when it was softened down, but you see all these right-wing movements and extremists, they're becoming more and more, because the competition between the nations, the competition between the economic competition is so high, and so many people are afraid, and the whole system is quite unstable. Also, the economic system is not really stable. It can happen something, and then the whole system crashes, like in 2008. The financial system.
And you said beautiful, because that would be the next part, leadership and the economy, leadership in corporates. How would a healthy leader act right now in this whole situation that gets really intense? So it seems to be like it goes in cycles. That's also what Eckhart Tolle once said. There's an awakening and evolving of emerging of humankind that goes in cycles, and we might even go back at the moment. We just feel the intensity of the world, and we try to get out of it, but we don't feel, everybody doesn't really know how. For a leader who is in his power, for a leader who is healthy, how would he lead his company of 90,000, 70,000 people?
His greatest wish would be that all those people he has an influence on would become healthy, also become healthy. And the one side, to help them to care for healthy psyche, what is necessary, that those around me, what is needed for them to develop their healthy psyche. On the other side, what can I do as this healthy leader to prevent new trauma? What is necessary in society to do not to traumatize others? And then, of course, we would start with how human beings are created, how they are born, then how they are raised up, and also. And if you know how a healthy people develop, a healthy psyche develops, then you very easily see, okay, it's very important that if a woman is up to become a mother, it must be her free decision. It's up to her, and she must be supported. And young girls and children, women have to be supported and have to be strengthened, that they make only the decision to become a mother when they really want it, when they see I'm incapable of it, and they are able to say, okay, I love myself in order that I'm ready to love my child. Then you have a look at the birth processes. You would see, okay, what is a healthy birth process? a lot of birth processes we have today nowadays are traumatizing. And then you would have to look further. What is necessary for the first years of a child? You see a child needs a healthy mother. You traumatize the child if this child is 4, 5, 6 months old and you give it in a kindergarten, a kindergarten. Yeah, you traumatize it. Like nowadays, systematically, a whole generation of children are traumatized from the very beginning, and so on. I would go through the whole all those elements of a society and say, where can we do something to prevent trauma? Not to let trauma happen. And when trauma happens, what can we do to help this person to get out of the trauma, not to repeat it, not to stuck in the trauma. That is what I would do.
Does it mean that talking about a corporate a business that has 70,000 employees, for instance, and there is a strong leader or this awake or this aware becoming leader who had maybe also some trauma therapy, maybe that would be, a fortune then for all the employees because he's more aware of that and aware of the qualities. Would that mean that 70,000 people go through therapy, or that there is, I'm asking, so how can you?
Why not? Yeah, why not?
Yes, why not? I
Why
totally agree, yes.
If it's necessary, why not? We do
Yes.
what is necessary, not what is, let's say, what is costs too much or what we need some time for it. You do what is necessary, and not what is in terms of financial things is you can afford. So
you said this so wonderfully, because you do what is necessary. When I go into the business world, you do have a lot of coaches, consultants, and this is also asked, quick fix. It's a quick fix. And I always say, yes, it's the next bullshit bingo on the market. And I get to a lot of discussions about this because things are offered and are asked for that's absolutely not possible, not professional, and do it in a quick fix and just put another layer of lies on it. And you also said, there's so much lying going on. There's, in politics, also in economy, there's one layer after another of a lie. Do people want to be lied to still, or are they really ready for the truth?
Yeah, I think what is also important to see as a reality is that we live in a competitive world. We still live in a world where there's competition on all levels. And the question is, why is it good for? Why should we compete in order to produce food and to produce transportation devices or houses? Why is it necessary to do it in a competitive way? What is it good for? And the same is, why is it to say America first, or Germany first, or Turkey first? What is this really good for? Meanwhile, we see it by the environment discussion that we live just on one globe. There's only one globe. Yeah, and the most intelligent thing would be now to work together in order to conserve this globe in the best way we can do. And that means we cooperate. We cooperate in order to solve our problems and not to win a competition. But what it means, maybe I have some advantages on the other side. To be sure, there's a big disadvantages on the other side. Yeah, and in the way I'm competing, I'm winning the game, I destroy the globe, I destroy the environment. Yeah? It doesn't make sense. So I think what would be necessary to really change is to widen our consciousness and to see that we all are human beings with, in a way, the same basic needs. And of course we are different, and everybody can be different, and everybody can bring in his individuality, and everyone is really unique. It doesn't, this is a fact, yeah. But we have basic needs that have to be fulfilled in order to develop a healthy person. And this is why don't we do it like this? Why do I think we Germans are better than the Turkish, or the American thinks they are better than the Polish people? That's not true. Every person on the world is a human being with basic needs, and it's not higher or deeper than mine. And I'm not higher a higher race or something like a person from another country. So to give up this old idea,
yes.
to give up this old idea of competition, starting to cooperate with each other, to make constructive ideas, have constructive ideas for really solving the problems on the basic, not only dealing with symptoms. What we do in the moment in politics, in economy, is just to deal with symptoms. Symptoms are graded by a competitive system, and you try to heal it with the means of a competitive system. How can this work at all? It can't work.
I like so much because, you know, there's a microcosmos and a macrocosmos, and there's this war inside, and that's about to heal. So if you have peace inside, there cannot happen war outside. And also your identity oriented approach in psychotraumatherapy is unity, is the oneness. And what I love so much about bringing in again a spiritual perspective of A Course in Miracles, A Course in Miracles is saying there's only one problem, and that's a problem, the separation of God, or the separation of love, how they call it. And then Eckhart Tolle, I love it so much, he said once, as a person, you are nothing. As consciousness, you are everything. And I said, yay, I love that. I love that. You know, I absolutely love that. I don't see any threat in that. I really do see the oneness and coming together in this. Now, going back to leadership, and it has been said that from Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, that the Western women are saving the planet, are the savers of the planet. And then you do have strong voters for female leadership. And you're smiling. And you said already in the pre-talk on the phone to me, Janine, trauma is not gender related. And trauma, you know, and there is a danger of, and I saw it in myself that I started thinking that way and said, wait a minute, I have to be really mindful about it. There's a danger of women are good and men are bad. So the male energy is the bad energy, the destructive energy, and then comes in the female energy, this understanding, embracing, and loving energy, which of course we know is not the case. Are women just at a different stage? Are they more reflected? If I go into my groups, or if I go, you know, my communities, or to retreats, or to yoga, it's a start. It's always filled up with women. There are one or two men. Have you different experience in psychotherapy? Are men starting to open up? I mean, in the end, it's becoming aware as a man and a woman. But women seem to be more driven, maybe more called. Is that true? Or am I wrong here?
Okay. This weekend I have the first training module of this year's training, and it was very interesting that because in this 40 people, and there are 16 men, I think, about, and the others are women, and there was very interesting the feedback of one of the female participants said, "Oh, I never thought before that men also have emotional needs." Yeah, she really, until this moment, she really believed that men do not have emotional needs. Maybe she had some experience with men, but now when she, in these 3 days, we have worked with, I think it was 5 or 6 of the men did their own process, and it was so clear how much emotional needs this men have, and what the longing for is the same what women are longing for contact, for being seen, being loved, being accepted, being wanted, the same.
Absolutely.
There's no different. At the beginning of our life, we all have the same needs. And then realize this. I think it's a nice idea that women should save the planet, should save us as men, but it wouldn't work. It will not work. And there's a lot of competence of men to solve the problems that we have common problems.
And I totally believe that. I had this, it was a few months ago, I talked with a group of 3 men who were, starting to becoming more aware, reflected, worked on their childhood. And I was very struck. It was a wonderful, wonderful interview with these men, very tender, very soft-spoken. And one man said, it's a conditioning that we are the hungry, sexual, craving man. We are conditioned that way, but it has nothing to do with the truth. And even in my process and learning, I thought I never thought about that. that could be like this. You know, my mother had trained me or had taught me, oh, men just always want it. Your men are different. Men are always sex hungry. Women are not that. So you give it to a man. That's how my mother has, you know, raised me. That's just one generation. And talking now about the next level of leadership, we have talked a little bit already about parenthood, so we can almost skip that out of the lack of time. But when we go to relationship, and we have such a crisis in a relationship, and it seems to be that, you know, this generation is having the most crisis, the most divorces and divorced children. And then everybody thinks you're not holding it together, you're not making an effort anymore. You know, our parents have done that effort. We're so proud of our parents, 35 years together. It's a mess behind, but it was shining in front. So I think it's just starting to crack open and open up to heal the whole relationship model. And leading in relationship, what is your experiences with relationship and men and women? I mean, women and men are suffering so much in relationships.
For me, the basic of a relationship is that you are in contact with yourself. The moment you're in contact with yourself and you're not longer be a perpetrator against yourself, you won't be a perpetrator against another person. So this is also true in a couple relationship. If there are conflicts, then you know, okay, it's not only about the other person to change, to do something else, or to be different, or to be another person, but it always has to do something with myself, and I look at myself, and maybe I do a process for myself in order to look, why did I come into this type of conflict, and so, and I can say from my personal experience, it always helps. It always helped me. I also all the time when I say, okay, I leave the relationship, but it's too much. Then I do a work for myself, and I find a way, for me and my partner, to find a solution for those conflicts we are in. So the first thing is, if you have a conflict with your partner, look at yourself. First is look at yourself and try to take this as a chance, as a symptom, also like illness can also be a chance for self-development, for growing, for a process of personal growing.
Now I hear so many voices of girlfriends, including myself, I have to admit. Aren't we doing already so much? Aren't we looking already? So now Dr. Ruppert said, start looking yourself. So I look at myself. My partner just does his usual thing. He doesn't start. So can a relationship survive if one is starting to do personal growth work and the other is not?
Yeah, what I said is it has to be true for both. If only one does this way, it won't work. And if you realize that your partner is resisting, and doesn't want, and he's nasty, and say you only have to do it, then it's not a good partner for you. But what I also observed, when I change, then also my partner gets an impulse. If it's really good change, not only some on the surface, but it's really deep down, it also gives your partner maybe the idea, okay, he's so different now, what do you do? Oh, maybe I do the same. So this is my experience also. There's a lot of relationships when maybe first the female part was showing up in therapy group, and then also the husband comes or the partner comes. I very often see it in my practice.
But then first you have to, I mean, I know it also from my own development. First you have to disconnect somehow, not disconnect, but somehow really let go of all the neediness and all the wanting from the other, and turn to yourself and make that your first relationship, and letting go of all the judgment and all the wanting from the other, which is a big step. And then you go to the second step and say, okay, now I heal myself and I built the first best and most important relationship, the one with myself. And that's sometimes, how would you describe, and you also have worked on yourself and you have said that it has changed your life to so much more lighter and better, richer quality. How does it feel to have a good relationship with yourself?
Yeah, the point of reference is in you, and not what do I have to do to fulfill the expectation of another person, of another institution, of my clients, whatever. So it's really say, okay, what is good for me? And if you really in contact with that, and you don't do harm to yourself, you won't don't harm to anybody else. And this is, I think, it's how you notice it. Whenever I observe myself, okay, there's always situations. Yeah? Some days ago, I took on the job to make therapy with someone who is in an enormous crisis, but I couldn't meet him personally. But it was during the Christmas holidays, and I agreed because it was in the some person close by, and I know the person. But I wasn't really committed. I wanted to have my space and have my time and during this time, but I didn't do it. And in the end, it was not good. I realized I didn't go to myself, and so I didn't do a good job. Yeah. So this is where you can realize, no, it's if you neglect yourself, you neglect then this what you do with others, it's not really good.
And it always comes with courage. I mean, you know, if you take care of yourself, you put yourself first, particularly for those who have learned to put others first. And there are many, particularly from our mothers and women, still think that's the way how they spoil their husbands and do everything. And then they get into overload. Maybe they're working and now they're doing that. So I see this often. Talking again about having a really good relationship, we're talking so much about self-love, following your heart, and then there's such little knowledge about self-love and really self-love. And for some people it starts with a bubble bath, and they take a chocolate and a glass of wine and they take a bubble bath, and we know that's not it. So going beyond the bubble bath, how would you say, how does self-love feel, or what is the best when we start to say, you know, I really like this, I really like what you're saying, I really want to go and develop myself and become heal and whole. How do I feel when I'm loving myself? How do you feel?
It's really not easy, because we are so used to illusion. We are so used to love illusions. We are not, from our experience, and we do not really know what is real love and what is love illusion. So I only learned it out of my therapy, out of doing this same, what I have developed, created this intention method. Only by this, I really got into contact with myself. It's really hard. Although to do it on yourself and to do it out of the books, or to do it out to get some advices here, it's really a matter of making the experience. Say, for example, write down as an intention, I love myself, and choose a person for love, and myself, and see what's happening. Yeah, and then you will see how much it's really reality, and you can do it, and how much there is still the trauma from the past there that prevents you from really being in contact with yourself. This is why I'm hesitating to tell you do this or that.
No, totally.
Just take the risk, have an intention like this, and have a look at yourself, and then you get the truth where you really are in the moment. And when you can, how you can go on and develop this, what we all want. Yeah, we want to love ourselves. Why not? It's good.
Absolutely. We're just taught so different. You know, you love your neighbor more than yourself, and even you might hate your neighbor. So loving yourself is such a foreign concept. What I also totally agree with, or it's my experience, is that you stand up for yourself in a different way. You word your voice, you set your boundaries. You don't do it. You can even do it gentle. You don't have to defend and attack. It's coming more from an organic way of setting boundaries. And sometimes it comes still with fear. That's what I can say, or still with insecurity. But it always is. It's always the way. There's no question mark around this. And that feels very strong. So there's a strong anchor you suddenly feel. And like when there's this kind of immediacy, this kind of directness. Sometimes I just stop and I get really silent, and it's almost like dropping into myself, sinking into myself, taking all that energy that in the midst of daily business, I'm just putting out, I'm running to-do lists, stop that and take my energy back and I describe it as being gentle with myself, being soft with myself, saying to myself a few nice words. Of course, this is not healing trauma, but it's something that in the midst of stress, you can immediately do, and it's the first step.
Yeah, this is the first step, preparing you, and then taking the risk to meet your trauma. I think this is only if you take this risk, you can be sure that what you have created is not just an idea or just a creation, but it's real.
Thank you so much. I had tons of other questions, but that's a wonderful, beautiful ending. And we almost hit the hour for our talk show. So thank you so much, Professor Dr. Franz Ruppert. Thank you so much for watching, the audience, New Generation Woman. This was New Generation Woman. This was Janine Panzenos. Thank you to Debbie Cook and to Michael Maria Kraus. And wherever you are, have a soulful, gentle, loving rest of your day. Doei, bye-bye, feine Abend, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir.